Proceed for Slate.
Speed. All right.
Slate.
Telephone company, Mr. Rob Bratton, roll 3, scene 1, take 1.
Set. Focus.
Focus.
Camera set. Action.
One of the most tragic and costly medical difficulties that faces our company and its employees is that of the problem drinker. If you have ever been exposed to an individual suffering with this affliction, on the job or off, you understand the discomfort and frustration that can result. Let's take a look at the typical problem drinker in our company. He's usually a man somewhere between 40 and 55 with 20 to 30 years service. He has been a good employee whom we don't want to lose. His work has started to suffer because of absenteeism, accidents, personality changes, and inefficiency. At this point, the company must take action. Our composite employee has been drinking for 10 to 15 years. During those years, he has probably endured many personal difficulties, perhaps divorce, financial setbacks, or legal entanglements. But through all this, he has done his best to conceal the real nature of his problem from his boss, and perhaps even from himself. He comes up with elaborate excuses, blames colds, nerves, and all sorts of other factors for these difficulties. He needs help, he wants help, but may not be willing to admit that drinking is a possible cause of his situation. That's a quick thumbnail sketch of what you're up against as a supervisor of a problem drinker. But how do you help him? What do you do? Where do you start? First of all, this folder, which is a supervisor's guide, will be helpful to you. It is, as the name implies, a guide, not an instruction. It sets forth a series of 5 administrative steps you should follow. How fully you pursue each step will be somewhat controlled by the employee's length of service and his willingness and his ability to cooperate. But it is important to give every employee who has a drinking problem the benefit of this basic plan for rehabilitation. Before we look at the 5 steps, let's review the basic company policy on use of alcohol. The use of alcohol is a personal decision. Its use, to the extent that it affects the job performance, is a legitimate concern of supervision. The key words here are job performance. Ask yourself this question: is the employee's job performance, attitude, attendance, conduct, or adherence to safety procedures being impaired due to a health problem? If the answer is no, you need to take no further action. If the answer is yes, contact the medical department informally and explain the circumstances as you know them. And since this may be a very serious matter, you'd be wise to inform your boss that you're taking steps to correct a possible drinking problem. Don't send the employee in for a personal evaluation at this time. Simply describe the situation to one of the staff physicians and ask if the symptoms seem to indicate a need for medical evaluation. Company medical may rule out such a possibility. In that case, your approach would be the same as with any other employee whose performance was not meeting standards. However, if the medical department does agree that a medical difficulty may exist, your next step should be to have a frank talk with the individual you're trying to help. The purpose of your discussion should be to help him recognize he has a problem and needs treatment. That's a tough assignment because a problem drinker must have outside help, but normally will not seek it on his own. Encourage him to seek that help for his own sake and be firm in doing so. Perhaps that talk will be enough. If not, and the employee doesn't correct his behavior as a result of your discussion with him, your next step is to send him to the medical department for a health evaluation and medical counseling. He may refuse to go. In that case, your only recourse is to demand that the deficiencies in his job performance be corrected immediately. Be sure you document the details of this conversation and all the deficiencies you have noted. Then, after an appropriate length of time, critically evaluate the employee's progress in his rehabilitation. Is his job performance meeting our standards? If the answer is yes, fine. But if it is no, then you must take further action, and more decisive action. However, before you begin, have another talk with the employee. Urge him to see the medical department and to accept personal responsibility for his own rehabilitation. This may be your last chance to help salvage this person, both as an employee and as a useful member of society. It's his choice, but be sure he understands the alternatives: final administrative action or his own commitment to his personal rehabilitation. Now let's suppose the employee does agree to see the medical department so that rehabilitative measures can be started. At this point, you have made your most valuable contribution. You've helped in early recognition and the beginning of treatment. Your responsibility doesn't end there, however. You, in most cases, are more influential than any other person in successful rehabilitation. As his boss, you are one of the few people, perhaps the only one, who can give the problem drinker the motivation to stop drinking. So keep in touch with the medical department and follow the employee's progress towards rehabilitation. Commend improving performance whenever you can. Help the individual regain confidence in himself. Each of these progressive steps can lead to rehabilitation, but not all problem drinkers can be rehabilitated. However, because an employee is in a rehabilitation program, he is not protected from the consequences of unacceptable behavior. If all else fails, then final administrative action must be taken. It must be fair, but it must be firm. To do otherwise is unfair to the employee, his co-workers, and the company. As you follow this program, it is of utmost importance to fully recognize the role our medical department plays. Their goal, like yours, is rehabilitation. But there is usually no medical cure for the problem drinker. The medical department can help with evaluation and consult, but not direct treatment. A common step medical might take, for example, would be to recommend participation in Alcoholics Anonymous. They will also recommend treatment for medical problems which might have resulted from the excess drinking. Let's review briefly the 5 administrative steps you should follow in helping one of your employees with a drinking problem. First, contact the medical department and inform your boss. Second, have a frank talk with the employee. Third, send the employee to the medical department. Fourth, begin rehabilitative measures. Fifth, continue supervision and follow-up with the medical department and your boss. Again, this is a difficult, frustrating area of human behavior, and the longer the situation exists, the worse the results. Your obligation to the employee and the company is to deal with the problem as soon as job performance is affected. As his supervisor, you should be certain that you have exhausted every resource at your command to prevent the usual final results of alcohol abuse: loss of health, family, job, and even life itself. But in the more positive vein, there are many who can be helped. Whenever we can, and however we can, we must do all we can to help the problem drinker help himself.